Thanks so much, Gary, for taking the time, and really looking forward to being able to put this video online, and hopefully we can learn a little bit more about your new book, and just have a conversation. I have a couple questions from Dan, who you know, and from my parents, and as well as myself, I prepared a couple. Dan asks, what kind of sprouts and carb sources would you recommend during winter time, if any?
Well, I grow my own potatoes, so in the summertime, and so I have that as a source of food, that I eat some potatoes. For me, they work well with me, and being my Aboriginal background and culture, potatoes come from North and South America, so we always ate them and consumed them. I also collect roots from dandelions and from artichokes, Jerusalem artichokes. I also use the flour from the cattail, which is a source of carbs. I will make bread from different beans and lentils and wheat and barley that I mix together. I follow the Ezekiel style bread of the Bible, but I make the true recipe. Mm-hmm. And I also put what the Bible calls fitches in my bread. So they're basically the seeds from the family of cumin, mustards, and bitter herbs. So I'm collecting those and putting them in amounts into my bread, so giving me the extra enzymes and minerals that sometimes even the best organically grown grains would not have. So I'm doing that. And also, as far as sprouts go, I sprout my own azuki beans. I even grow my own mung beans. I buy the fenugreek, organic as possible. I sprout that. I like it.
Fenugreek?
Fenugreek. It's a plant that comes from India originally, and it's talked about. A lot of people know about it. It's even mentioned in a different name, I guess, in the biblical text. It's talked about as well. So I like fenugreek. I like to sprout it. It's easy to sprout. But let me think about this now. As far as sprouting goes, there's only a few things I sprout like that in the wintertime. I'm usually using the dried greens from different leaves and plants that I collect throughout the spring, summer, and fall, and I dry them for winter use. A lot of those plants I'm eating fresh in the summertime, spring and fall, right? So, but for the wintertime, I'm using that. And then in the wintertime, a lot of people, for example, don't know a potato, if you don't grow it chemically and you grow it organically the way, or as natural as possible the way I grow it. A lot of times I don't even use any fertilizer or manure of any kind in the soil. I just grow my potatoes in soil and I rotate my crop really well. So a potato is 40% protein. It's not a pure carb. See, a lot of people think like a Jerusalem artichoke, for example, that's the native sunflower of North America. Sunflowers are traditional sunflowers, which people think come from North America, originally come from Russia. That's the sunflower with the seeds. Mm-hmm. Okay? But our native sunflower is the Jerusalem artichoke. And so Jerusalem artichokes, for example, are really high in inulin. And so they really balance out your blood sugar and your pancreas and your liver. And, they store very well, pretty well all winter, just like a potato. And you can eat those raw and cooked. So there's a lot of different varieties of starches that are out there that are native to this country that you really don't have to do a lot and work that hard with them. Pumpkins, gourds, squash, which are universal to the whole earth, different forms of them growing everywhere, and Canada and North America being the home of a lot of these products, there again, that's a real source of carbs for cooking and eating in the wintertime. You can't really eat them raw, But I intend to do an experiment, for example, where I'm going to take slices of pumpkin and I'm going to put them in my sauerkraut, in the cabbage, and see if it'll ferment. Because a lot of people don't realize when you eat pumpkin, if you cook it, it's pretty sweet. It doesn't taste sweet when it's raw, if you eat a little bit of it. But when you cook it, it has quite the amount of sugar in it. So, you know, it's a real source of carbs.
Kind of reminds me of sweet potato. I mean,
Right.
my mom would slice very thin pieces of sweet potato and eat it raw, and she couldn't get enough, and I imagine it'd be hard on her digestive tract. But
Well, not really.
No?
Sweet potatoes, you know, if you're not over consuming it. And the same thing, I mean, you can eat a potato raw, but I wouldn't really practice that a lot because, you know, if you ask any medical doctor, more people are poisoned from eating raw potatoes or eating potatoes in general than probably any other kind of poisoning because they're from the nightshade family. And even tomatoes, you know. So, you know, they need to be cooked.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't know, for example, with beans, for example, beans are better for you cooked than they are raw because they have a lot of oxalic acid in them. And so a lot of people will complain about, for example, eating sorrel, different types of sorrel, because there's 800 varieties of sorrel around the earth, and they're really high in oxalates. And they say, well, oxalates will poison you, but you know, you don't see a sign in the grocery store that says, you know, don't eat beans because they're full of oxalates. Well, beans are full of oxalic acids, probably a lot more than wild sorrel, but nobody complains about that. So, you know, there's lots of sources of food. I mean, emergency food in native culture was the bark from poplar, the inner bark.
Yeah.
You can eat it raw or cooked. You could probably make a bread flour out of it if you dried it out after you cooked it.
How deep is that inner bark? Because the poplar, it kind of has a very thin bark.
Yes,
already.
the outside layer is about maybe a quarter of an inch thick, the heavy part, and then that inside layer it's like a 16th of an inch thick to a 1/8 of an inch thick. And the best time to collect it actually is in the springtime when it's easy to peel off. Wintertime it'd be pretty tough for you to peel it off, but you can still do it.
Cool. Good to know.
White birch bark is edible. If you grind it up and dry it up, you can make bread flour from it. The buds of birch trees and poplar trees could be dried and ground into some type of meal or flour. They don't taste good. They're very bitter.
Is that what's known as balm of Gilead?
Yeah, the Bible talks about poplar as a sacred tree. It's called the balm of Gilead. It is. And so, you know,
Has a funny taste.
it has a very bitter, nasty aftertaste,
Yeah.
but it's very good for your health because it'll kill off parasites. It'll do many properties. It has lots of minerals and vitamins in it. It's a sacred tree. That's why it grows everywhere, on every continent. Forms of poplar grow, and at the same token, most people don't realize that poplar trees are connected. Every one of them are connected by roots. So they grow by root rhizome or by seed. So the largest plantation of poplar in the world is in the central United States, in the California, not the California, but the I got it mixed up. In the forest, the southern part of below the Great Lakes. I'm trying to think of the right name of it right now, but anyway. That forest has the largest poplar growth of anywhere in the world. It's all connected.
Wow.
And you know, Carolina forests. And so we basically right here in this area, we're in the northern Carolina forests. And then basically when you go north, like to the Sudbury Basin, that's part of the watershed for the St. Lawrence. So that's basically the St. Lawrence watershed. Starts in the Sudbury Basin and it flows, you know, through the Great Lakes and it goes right through. That's the St. Lawrence watershed. And so it was said a few years ago by some scientists researching around the world, and it was even mentioned on a show that the CBC had and still has on called Doc Zone, that the greatest amount of natural remedies and undiscovered treatments for people in the entire earth is basically in the boreal forests, which basically is part of the Sudbury Basin and north to like James Bay, that whole part of central Ontario, that's the boreal forest, the largest boreal forest in the world. And it's basically got most of the natural medicines, more than anything that would be found in the Amazon or any other part of the world. And it's been known for a long time, but you know, most people are just not aware of that kind of stuff. So I know I went off a little subject here with what you were talking about, but
No, that's okay.
I gave you some extra ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. That was great. You talk about eating by season, and you really champion that because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, nature basically provides the nutrition for itself. You know, the animals, right? And for us, obviously, God, you know, made the world for us to survive the elements, and so it would give us resistance and resilience in the elements. And so, you know, you talk about in the summertime, we've got lots of, you know, high fiber, easily digestible greens. You know, even go as far as to mention in tropical climates where citrus fruit grow, and the citrus fruit has an effect of kind of cooling you from the inside out by bringing your blood closer to the surface of your skin and causing you to perspire, which makes sense in hot tropical climates. And yet we go to grocery stores and we see, like, you know, the clementines. Now is when they're being sold to us. And my prof at school today, she's like, next week I'm going to bring everybody like tangerines or clementines, and I had the urge to just be like, no. But you know, I think I'll bring it up to her. But and so Dan was saying, in a seasonal Canadian diet, we really don't get much fiber during the winter, do we? I mean, I guess other than what you would have preserved from summertime, from what you've harvested in summer. So that would mean that you'd have to do your preserves. You couldn't just. Well, you did mention, of course, you did mention, you know, the emergency foods, right, from poplar bark. And that's, I'm sure, has fiber in it.
Yeah, but I can go out in the winter time at any time of the year, like right now. If it was daytime outside, I could do a demonstration. We could walk around this neighborhood, or if we're at my farm, we could walk around. And for example, a lot of green vegetation that grows in the summertime, some of the certain flowers are more medicinal, and they're bitter and they don't taste really well. But after they freeze and they dry out from the sun in the wintertime, back and forth, that heating and cooling, they're always above the snow line, and a lot of these plants are very easily converted into a bread flour. The tops, the flowers themselves. And there's a lot of fiber in them because that's basically, they're very fibrous.
Like burdock would be an example?
You could use the burdock. That would be an example. You could use the burr. The whole entire burr is filled with seeds.
Yeah.
And so you could grind that all up, and you would have lots of fiber, and you would have nutrients, which was a great blood thinner and cleaner, right in that seed head. And so there's a lot of other plants like that. I mean, the dried up goldenrod flowers. You can eat goldenrod as a flower in a salad. You can use it for tea. When you're making something into a tea, for example, you are actually cooking the plant and getting the juices out of it. But you're maybe not using all the fiber. You're still boiling it. You are cooking it,
Yeah,
right? So you're getting all the minerals and vitamins, or as much as you can obtain from it, by putting boiling water in a cup and steeping it.
Yeah.
And so it would be no different than taking that flour and grinding it up into powder and adding it to your soup. You know, and if you put other vegetables with it, well, you'd be drinking, you know, a mix of burdock with or goldenrod with your soup, right? So people have just lost that. So, for example, you know, they say there's not a lot of fiber or whatever, but if I gave you, you know, for example, in the late fall, you went and picked acorns from an oak tree when the squirrels are gathering them. I mean, the squirrel doesn't eat all of the acorns he gathers.
No way.
He hides some for the winter time.
Because he's spending all day around that bottom of the tree.
Right, but he spends some time putting them away, right?
Yeah.
So we see the squirrel is gathering stuff. So, you know, he's teaching us, and the chipmunks too, during the summertime, they're putting things away for when they're hibernating inside their burrow. The chipmunk's down on the ground, alive, he sleeps, and he eats. And so he's put away all these seeds and things that he puts away into the ground. He preserves them for his winter survival. So we have that. We have teachers. There's teachers around us all the time. So, you know, the deer are browsing from the ends of branches in the wintertime. I mean, we don't have a four-stomach system to be able to digest the same way they do. So we can take some of these buds from different trees that the deer teaches are edible to them, and we could dry them out even in the wintertime and grind them up into powder and add them to our grain flour or something else that we were consuming. There's nothing stopping us from doing this. The only thing that's stopping us is we've limited our mind into not looking at what they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
We've removed ourselves literally from that observation.
Right. So
point.
you know,
So
if you look at a blue jay, you know, people look at a blue jay and say, "Oh, it's so pretty," you know, and it eats seeds and that. But a blue jay is a carnivore. You know, they're carnivore type birds. The whiskey jack is a carnivore. Crows, they're carnivores. In the wintertime. Yeah.
Nuthatch will eat the bugs.
Yeah, well, but these birds also eat dead things, or they'll kill mice, or they'll kill moles, and they eat them.
Wow.
That's, you know, crows in the wintertime, one of the things they feed off is dead things on the side of the road, or, you know, they kill mice. They fly up and down the roads and they see mice coming out to eat things on the side of the road and they attack mice. So do owls and hawks all winter. They live off of eating mice. Yeah. So, you know, we can't eat mice. They're not digestible to us at all. They will poison us.
Really?
But, yeah, because it's not a clean food. It's not a clean meat. They carry too much bacteria.
Okay.
But certain things in the environment are designed. They keep the population of the mice down. And that's their job. And the mice are also eating things from the environment that keep the environment healthy and keeping us from getting disease by cleaning up the environment. Everything's got its purpose. We need to pay attention and see the harmonious thing that works to it. I mean, look, when people say, well, I shouldn't eat deer, I shouldn't kill a deer. Hold on a minute. The wolves are eating deer. And why is the wolf eating the deer? Well, the wolf is eating the sick deer out of the herd to keep the population healthy, so that if we eat a deer, we're going to eat healthy meat, a clean animal. Wow. And, for example, just in the province of Ontario, there's more deer killed by cars on the highway 3 times over what hunters take every year, and the hunters don't even get a third of the population. There's 2/3 more killed just by cars. We're just talking in the fall time. We're not talking during the summer, spring, or in the summer, or in the middle of the winter when there's no season. Out of all the animals that are killed by either by railroads, by trains, by cars, by planes, by fallout, by all the other stuff that's being killed on the earth. And I'm just giving an example of a big game animal. Nobody looks at the stats. You know, looks at what the insurance companies report on accident claims and sees that, hey, you know, last year in the province of Ontario and for 20 years back, between moose, deer, and bear, there was almost 17,000 animals per year killed on 400 series highways. That's just basically southern Ontario. We're not talking anywhere else, Trans-Canada Highway or anything else. People are not examining things. They're not really examining what they're doing to the environment by transportation. For example, when the bananas are coming green from South America and being trucked by that truck that's driving from point A to B, and then the next truck to the next point A to B, and by the time they get to northern Ontario, how much destruction was done, how much fuel was burned, you know, how much poison was put into the atmosphere, and on top of that, that the bananas, by the time they got to Sudbury, were still green, hard as a stone, and they had to put them in a warehouse and actually put inert gas in to pre-ripen them so people could consume them in the store. Then there's another fallout. People don't realize that because these bananas did not tree ripen, they don't have any digestive enzymes to digest the banana.
Wow.
And the glycemic index in the banana, because it's artificially ripened, the sugar is way higher. So now it's actually poisoning you to eat it. Same thing with oranges and all kinds of imported fruits, because they're not tree ripened, so they don't have the enzymes. They're ripened artificially. So they taste really sweet, but they're doing you harm. So we don't see nature doing this. I don't see a deer in the field in the wintertime with a group of other deer browsing or eating different herbs and grasses from the field that are dried up. And I don't see one of them with a sign on his back says, "I'm the medical officer. Come and see me for your health." We don't see that. I don't see birds flying around, landing on a telephone wire when they come back from South America in the springtime, saying, "Hey, chickadee, do you have a blender and some electricity so I can juice my mango?" I don't see any of this. If someone can show me something like this, I am sure we could get billions of hits and money lining up, people throwing money at me just to get a glimpse of this. For sure they'd want to see it, right? But no one can show me this kind of stuff because it doesn't exist. Every creature on earth is eating right where they abode, where they live, where they make their house.
Right.
Why, as human beings, are we doing the exact opposite?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
The exact opposite. We're transporting food from miles instead of growing a little bit around our house or our apartment or our park, or harvesting or planting fruit trees in the local park or down the sidewalks. Why do we have to have imported trees coming from other countries that we plant around our cities that don't produce anything for us? Why is that policy in? I think every boulevard in every city should have apple trees, plum trees, pear trees on every corner. Mulberry trees, all the stuff that will grow, plant it, right? So that the city is totally sustainable, right? Maybe it's not the greatest thing for people to make money off of in business, but I think if people did this, there would be more money to be made because you wouldn't have enough people to harvest all the stuff, to put the stuff in jars. The glass manufacturers would be making so many mason jars, man, they wouldn't know where to get the glass from. But you see, the opposite thing is going on, where a few people are in control of the whole thing, and nobody is really working. Everybody is, playing on the internet. Yeah, jobless, not really doing anything constructive.
Consumer society, right? I mean,
right.
We're willing to spend our hard-earned dollars on services, and like you said, nutritionally void goods.
Well, they're eating foods that are basically giving them very little nutrition, no nutrients, lots of carbs and sugar, but no real nutrients. And that's the sad part. So people can't figure out why they're not losing weight. Well, they're not losing weight because what are they eating? They're eating this glue food. And so you can pick up even organic chips, supposed to be organic. I go around and I, walk into stores and I read the label and I sometimes just scratch my head that, a bag, it's hard to find a bag of potato chips that says potatoes and what type of oil they use to cook it in. Some of them say sunflower, and I'll tend to buy that over if I'm stuck and I need to eat something. When I'm driving a long distance and I want to keep awake or, because I'm tired. And it'll say sea salt. There's very few companies that just have those 3 ingredients.
Yeah.
You'll look at something else that's supposed to be natural, and the ingredient list, I'm telling you, there's got to be 200 words down there. Some of them you would have to sit down with your laptop and Google the name and to find out what is actually in that product. And it's sad that we need to have 50 ingredients to make a natural product, and it's supposed to be a potato, some vegetable oil, and a little bit of sea salt. And the other question I have is, why are anyone anywhere on the earth cooking with vegetable oils of any kind?
I was going to say that. Wouldn't lard be like a healthier choice to?
No,
to
pork
cook?
fat you should never eat. No, you shouldn't cook with pork fat or animal fat. The lowest rate of heart disease in the world used to be India, and now they're starting to get problems in India like we've got in North America, is because the super rich and elite people now don't want to be seen at the farmer's market, so they go to the store and they buy stuff because they want to be shown as they're wealthy.
Wow.
And so, but India used to make ghee, clarified butter.
Right.
And, you know, if the country of India would have the lowest rate of heart disease for years and years and years in the world, and they ate butter by the millions of tons, clarified butter, you mean to say we, the land of the rich, who have millions of cows producing milk, we can't take butter and clarify it to cook some potatoes and put them in a bag of chips? I mean,
I've never seen like a kind of a snack food ever cooked in butter or ghee. I've only vegetable oils, you know.
Tomorrow is going to be my birthday. I'll be 58 years of age, January 24th.
Many happy returns to you, Gary.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And, you know, it bends my mind to think this, that for the last 50 years I know of my life, I've always eaten butter. I've as far as I can remember back, and my father always said that if there wasn't enough butter on the bread that you could see your teeth mark, he would give you the bread back and say, put more butter on. Okay? I was raised that way. Now, when I wasn't feeling well and I was very sick in my late 30s, and I started healing myself, the doctors were always amazed that my cholesterol levels were 3 times lower than what they considered normal. And some of them would ask me, like, how that was. And I said, well, I eat butter. And they would say, oh, but butter makes cholesterol raise. Well, that must be a lie, because I eat butter every day on my vegetables, on the bread I make. I fry my eggs easy over in butter. And I currently right now eat 4 eggs easy over in butter a day. I've been doing that for more than 15 years.
Did their eyebrows go higher when you also mentioned the eggs consuming?
Well, why is my cholesterol 3 times lower than normal still?
Who set that normal standard? I mean,
it doesn't matter. Who set the standard? What people don't realize is evidence has shown a long time ago that eggs fried easy over in butter actually lower cholesterol, because the egg yolk is so high in good fats, omega-3 and omega-6, it actually lowers your body cholesterol. Butter does the same thing. Butter makes your cholesterol go down, because when you eat butter, you get butyric acid or butyrol. And it's a natural healer for your gut lining. It's a natural healer for your liver. When you don't eat enough omega-3, and especially omega-6, I think right now there's too much emphasis on omega-3 and not enough on omega-6. There's a lot of research that proves if you don't get omega-6, you'll starve to death. But you can have all the omega-3 and 9 your body can have, and you will still starve. Your brain feeds primarily on omega-6. And so a lot of foods contain omega-6. Dr. Oz even talks about one of his antioxidant brain boosters and immune system. He has 4 things, and one of them is sunflower seeds. Well, sunflower seeds, eating them, they're really high in omega-6, far more than omega-3. And even sunflower oil, which I eat a tablespoon of it every day, is really high in omega-6. When you give your body the oils and the fats that are good without cooking them raw, your body starts to lose all of the garbage, because it doesn't need to turn carbs into fat, because you already got the fat.
We're talking about the importance of omega-6s and how that's kind of been lost in favor of omega-3s and more in diets today or food choices.
Yeah, well, you see, your body has to have a balance. For example, a lot of the people don't know also, for example, hemp, which is talked about in the Bible. It's called manna. I discussed that in my book. And I show the actual relevance of it. And a lot of people don't understand, for example, hemp oil, if it hasn't been sterilized or radiated, has omega-3, a higher level of omega-6. It has omega-7 and omega-9. And it's one of the few plants that have all 4 omega oils in them at the same time, which are really, really relevant to your health. And the oil is green like you juiced grass. I mean, it's dark green like chlorophyll because it's really high in a lot of chlorophyll. And it's also very high in vitamin A. And so makes sense because vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin. It's also very high in vitamin E. Again, vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin. So, I discuss something in my book where I say, for example, all forms of good proteins on earth are controlled. You don't see the government saying you can't eat your grass off your lawn. But they tell you, well, you can't grow hemp, you can't raise chickens, you can't have your own eggs, or you can't have a cow in the backyard for your own milk, you can't have goats. They're always limiting you on good sources of protein. Heaven forbid you put a pond in your backyard, fill it up with fish, and start selling it to your neighbors. They're going to come and arrest you. They're always controlling the protein sources. Why? Is because the protein sources have the good fats and the proteins that actually rebuild your body. The greens are the cleansing tools. And so that's why when we eat like nature does by seasons and we move our things around, we really don't get the ability to have a problem with allergies because we get to eat something for 3 to 6 months and then it's out of season or we ran out till the next season. So our bodies get a break continuously where we're eating a variety all the time. And when we're eating in the season, we're actually eating the energy that is in that season and the products that are around us and from our environment to keep us strong and healthy in that season. Like when you look at native culture, I mean, they didn't import oranges from Florida. They went to the white pine trees or spruce trees, juniper trees, all of the green trees. There's 7 in North America. And the Canada yew, which is poisonous, but when you boil up some of the needles with other ones in the water, you got a little bit of toxins, but that was like an antifungal, an antiviral to get rid of toxins out of your intestinal tract. So you're getting 7 different types of vitamin C. And you're getting vitamin A with them, and you're getting B vitamins from spruce, and you're getting a whole complex. So we knew that drinking those teas in the wintertime were good for our teeth, our gums, our digestive system. They kept our minerals and vitamins up so that we could digest food, so we could actually digest the meat. We could digest the bark from a tree when we ground it up and cooked it as flour, right? So, see, we weren't importing anything. It was right here, right local.
Yeah.
And if you go into a forest and you look at sometimes the evergreens, how popular they are, well, we have all this magnificent supply, that's so much of it, in great abundance. Yet, most people are running to the store because they got a cold to buy something that's artificially made or imported from somewhere else when they could just walk outside and find it. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's why I talk and I told you earlier, I don't see a deer in a field. One of them says I'm a medical officer. No, he just instinctively knows that, hey, what I need's right here.
Right.
It's right beside him. Right? What happened to the human being? We allowed other people to brainwash us.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true. Starts in the schools, right?
Programming.
Yeah. TVs, right? So Dan asks, this is his third question. He says, what would you say your macronutrient ratios are by season? Like during summer, what would be like, your fat to protein to carb, and then winter, your fat to protein to carb. Do you find that there's an optimal, I guess, most people, common sense would probably maybe venture them to guess that during winter you probably want like higher fat content, and so you have more like protein and fat, and then maybe during the summer more of like a plant, more of a higher plant ratio.
That's a little bit of a misnomer. People would misread that. When Weston A. Price went around the world, whether he was in South America or the Central Plains of Africa in the deserts, or he was in Northwest Territories, or in Alaska,
He traveled a lot, eh?
He went around the world, and it took him 7 years to do it. He went 3.5 years at a time, twice. First, he photographed people's teeth, and then secondly, he went around and wrote down everything they ate and nutritional contents. He figured it all out.
Amazing. He was the president of the American Dental Association,
yes,
right?
in the 30s. And they voted him off the board after he wrote his book, and they tried to squash all his information. That's why he made a foundation with his money and preserved the information for future generations. He found the ratio was 80% fat, 20% protein in fruits and vegetables by season. So, for example, if we just watch nature and what I've seen in nature, the animals that are having 4 stomachs, that are eating, like the deer that eat me out of the home in spring and summer and the fall, and unless I, chase them away all the time and keep the electric fence, and they'll even go through the electric fence to eat my food. So there must be something in my food that they really like.
That's good to know.
So, so I must be doing a good job, because boy, they really love that food. They tend to eat the tops of the plants and the fresh stuff.
Right, the more tender?
Yeah.
Oh, the tops.
Yes, and in the wintertime, they're eating more of the dried stuff and the harder stuff. But when you look at all of that stuff, they're still eating this ratio the way we should eat, 80% fat and 20% protein. And they're eating some fruits and berries and things that are sweeter by season. So if you look at a coyote or a wolf, if you look at a coyote and watch a coyote, in the summertime, he's probably more raw food and vegetarian than the best of the best on the earth right now. In the wintertime, he's an all-out carnivore. But he still does browse things and everything else to keep his body clean. He eats this balance, right?
And so these plants that the deer and the coyotes will eat a lot of, they're high in fats, right?
Yes.
Like, for example, when I discovered purslane, that became like my new favorite wild forage. And
right.
That has fats, right? It has
yes,
like
it has omega-3 and omega-6 as a balance. My favorite plant to consume pretty well all year round in different forms is lamb's quarters. I think lamb's quarters, in my personal opinion, is the most nutritious plant in minerals and vitamins on earth. It originally came from the Persian Empire, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iran and Iraq. That was the Persian Empire. And it's basically a universal plant that's around the world everywhere. So did purslane come from that empire too. And, I find that the best place my lamb's quarters grows is in my potato rows, or in between the potato rows. And I let it grow. And I consume it in the spring and summertime as a cooked pot herb. And in the fall, I will collect the seeds and dry them. And in wintertime, I'll add that to my bread, or I'll throw them into soup, or I'll put them in my food, or I'll cook them with some meat. So I've always got that one plant being used all season around in different parts of it, right? So, for example, I could go in my backyard right now with a flashlight, and I could go to the Rose of Sharon, and the Rose of Sharon flowers that I was eating in the summertime, because they don't start till about mid-July, and they stay right till the end of September. And a Rose of Sharon tree, bush, will produce thousands of flowers that'll fall onto the ground.
They
just fall onto the ground.
Yeah.
So, but if you take a Rose of Sharon flower and you put it in a blender with a little bit of water, and you blend it up to like juice, you'll notice right away that there'll be a layer of fat, like foam, on the top of your water. because that flour is really high in fat.
Wow.
So in the wintertime right now, you could go outside and it looks like a star apple. The seeds are all opened up and the little black seeds are inside. They're about the size of a black peppercorn or smaller. And it's full of these little seeds. Now in March, when songbirds come back from South America and southern United States, as far as they're going, whatever species, they come back, they'll be in that tree along with the sparrows that are staying here all year round. Mm-hmm. And they'll be in those Rosa Sharons eating those little seeds out, and some of them fall on the ground because they don't eat all of them. And that's why Rosa Sharons, you plant one, man, they keep spreading. And so, for example, that's just an example of, I've got 2 sources of food from that one tree. I've got a winter source and a late summer source. And this year, for example, I did a little experiment. I took the flowers and I put pure flowers and a little bit of water in a pot, and I blended them all up, and I threw a little bit of raw honey at the last few minutes of boiling in there. I mixed it up and I just poured it into some jars, and I didn't pressure boil them. I just put them in the fridge and let them vacuum down. And it didn't taste like a phenomenal thing. It didn't taste as good as the fresh flour. It tasted like slimy grease. Basically, that's what the flour tastes like when I cooked it up. It's a slimy texture. Almost like egg white.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like if you blended raw egg white.
But the sweet with the honey.
Yeah, with a very, very little. Because it would take a lot of honey to make it really sweet. I just put a little bit in. And so every time I made some yogurt, I'll make my own natural kefir yogurt with goat milk, I was adding a couple of tablespoons of this Rosa Sharon, like gluey stuff, that I cooked up from the flour, to my mixture till I ran out of it, say a month ago. I had 4 or 5 jars in the fridge, and I used them up every day when I was making some. I put some in, and I used it up. So everybody can do these opportunities and make these things, if they just open their mind and look at what's available. So, for example, like I mentioned, the Rosa Sharon, I can go out in my backyard and say, for example, tomorrow I wanted to take and make some soup, or tomorrow morning I'm going to cook some potatoes on the stove, make a stir fry, and I'm going to put some my wild oregano in, and some sweet basil, and maybe a little mint, and some coriander, and I'm just going to grind it all up, and I'm going to throw it in with my potatoes, and I'm going to cook the potatoes. I could also walk into the backyard and spend 20 minutes and pick up maybe a tablespoon or 2 of the Rosa Sharon seeds and grind them up and throw them in as well. So, they're going to give me some nutrients from that plant and from that tree. And those seeds I know are edible because I've seen the birds eating them. Mm-hmm. And I've been eating the flowers, and I've eaten the seeds in the past. And the seeds taste a little bit of nutty, like a nutty taste like you'd eat a peanut. Right. And so that tells you right away they're high in fat. And so they're going to give me some essential oils that I would not get from a normal food supply. Even though my food supply is superior and really high quality compared to most people, it's not that no one else can not do this. Everyone can do what I want to do. Everyone can do what I do. Are they just willing to do it or not? That's the choice. You have a choice.
I think they need more direction, inspiration from people like you, and once you feel the results, like when I started during the summer times eating dandelion salad, like I started a routine in the summer of 2012 when I started working at the bank. I would get up early, no matter when I started, and I'd go to the local park and I'd forage, and I'd get the dandelion, I'd get the plantain, sometimes I'd get lucky with some sorrel, and get the flowers, the dandelion flowers, of course. And yeah, I'd bring it home, and I'd wash it, and then I'd make a salad. And I'd have that with, like chicken or steak for breakfast or eggs. And I'd have the raw salad. And yeah, with, olive oil and whatever. And man, the energy that I would get from that. And you really had to chew it, and it was really hearty almost. The dandelions themselves, the greens, are just hearty. And the energy that I had was just unbelievable. I just couldn't couldn't understand it, and my stomach, it felt like it became harder, not harder, more resilient to digesting things, and it felt like the dandelions themselves were just giving me like these superior digestive juices. And once people try these simple things and experiment, and they make a routine of it, because I guess there's some healing that your body has to go through too.
Well, yes. Well, what most people don't understand is when you eat bitter herbs from the fields, the wild greens, they stimulate your acid production in your stomach so that the proteins you ingest will be easier for you to digest.
Makes sense.
Plus the greens are so high in chlorophyll. So if we look at a drop of blood, a schematic of the hydrogen bonds which make up red blood, and we look at chlorophyll in a schematic, and if we take the two schematics and place them over the top of each other, we see that green juice from plants only has one hydrogen bond missing, and unless you look at the schematics over the top of each other, you can't tell the difference, because looking at them they look identical, except there's one bond missing. Cool. And so green plant juice would be red if there was one bond added. And
right.
People don't understand this, that the green juice from plants helps to rebuild your blood, helps to rebuild it, clean it. But it's not building your entire body, because you need the fats and proteins. So there has to be this balance. And so there's the same balance in nature. 60% of the animals in nature eat plants, 40% of the animals in nature eat meat. We need to almost kind of follow that ratio. There's a lot of people going on to this paleo diet right now that we see it advertised. Even Dr. Oz is talking about it. Other people are talking about it.
Yeah, I've heard about it
where people are eating meat and greens, basically.
Okay.
And
so that's a good combination.
It's a very good combination as long as they get enough of the good fats.
Right.
But I don't like diets because, I point out in my book, people who eat diets are dying. People who eat ways of living and eat local by season live. If we go back in time, if I look at my grandmother's time when she raised my mother, and her two sisters and brothers, 5 of them, in a little cement building that the man today owns that property, uses that as woodshed. And it's about maybe 16 feet wide by 20 feet long, and it didn't have a second floor in it. It had a few bunk beds and a wood stove and the outside well and washroom. And I'm going to tell you something. My mother, when she was my age, she was a tough, strong lady. 5'2", nothing, 150 pounds wet. But I'm going to tell you something. What she could do physically was mind-bending. Wow. And so, how did they get so strong? My mother died in her late 80s, and, I helped her for the last 10 years of her life or more. I used to grow her food for her garden, and take care of her and bring her shopping for certain things, stuff like that. And, she had physical strength till a few months before she died. And even when she wasn't well, she still had a lot of physical strength, more than most people could even comprehend. Where did this come from? It came from a simple way of living with simple foods. Mm-hmm. Growing your own vegetables and gardening yourself and doing that kind of stuff. My grandmother never bought anything. People used to come to her house to get healed and for all kinds of stuff. And I was a little kid. I remember that, going to her place, and there was always somebody or coming or going. And she was walking outside, picking stuff from the yard or for the forest and saying, bring this home, boil it, cook it up as tea, eat this, and you're going to get better. Or she was making stuff together with some animal fat, saying, put this on your skin and it'll get rid of that problem. So that's what started my mind learning this as a little kid. I went away from it. When I was helping my mother in her late years of life, I used to ask her, how come you didn't practice this or do that? Well, it was just easy for me to go to the store. I wasn't interested in it. I had no interest in it. Well, it skipped her whole generation, right? Her sisters and brothers never practiced any of it either because they weren't interested in learning it. Yet my grandparents, both my grandmother and my grandfather, which I never met, supposedly practiced this and were doing great things for people around them. I was blessed to have that inspiration put into my mind. When I got sick, I remembered reading as a kid what was written in biblical text, and about every book in the Bible talks about food and nutrients and ways of living and laws that you should follow to keep you healthy. And when the native part of me in culture, when I'm sitting outside of in the environment, I see the exact same thing as the laws written in biblical text. I see those same laws. I see the way nature behaves, and I see the way it was written. It's the same thing. You look and read in the book of Job. Job says to the physicians, I quote this in my book, that look at the animals, they will teach you. Look at the birds in the sky, they will teach you. Look in the sea, the fish will teach you. Look at the earth, and the earth will teach you. He quotes this, and when you look at this evidence, you see the exact same thing occurring. You don't see a variation of it. You see the exact same thing.
It's amazing. I actually haven't finished the book of Job, but so I haven't read that specific part where he tells the physicians to look at nature. That's pretty cool. I can't
Well,
wait to get
when
to that
you
part.
look through my book, you're going to get some more inspiration, because you'll see a few things in there that I'm venturous enough to actually put them down in writing and say, here, look at this verse. It's right there. Don't argue with me. Just argue with the words. Then walk out in your backyard. You can see the same thing.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading it. Definitely got to get a copy for sure. So yeah, you talked about you got sick when you were around 30, right?
Late 30s, yeah.
Okay, your late 30s, and I guess that was your turning point to realize that
Yeah, well,
you had to start changing your diet.
I had to change my way of living.
Not just what you were eating.
Yeah, not only just what I was eating. I mean, I changed primarily what I was eating, because your body's made of food and nutrients.
Yeah.
I also started, boiling and filtering water a specific way, which I talk about in my book. I do that.
Cool, I'm interested in that for sure.
I also, talk about breathing. I rechanged my way of breathing from shallow breathing, the way the majority of the population does today, to breathing the way all animals on Earth do, in the lower diaphragm.
Mm-hmm.
I trained with a Chinese master, and it's not something that takes years of practice to do. You were born breathing in your belly as a baby. It's society and your parents and people around you that tell you to stand up straight and stick your chest out and breathe up here, that actually make you shallow breathe, and your body naturally will take the easiest route because it's easier for you to shallow breathe.
Yep.
But it's not healthy for you. And so when you regain the mental constituents to breathe the way you were born, your body becomes healthy, and you start realizing that you shouldn't go back the other way. And when you breathe down in your lower diaphragm, automatically you are moving your full internal organ system. You're circulating all of your blood.
Amazing.
And at the same token, you're oxygenating your blood. And the best example, as a car mechanic and a machinist and an engine builder, I could tell you that if we don't get oxygen to fuel, we can't burn anything. And so in order to have lots of energy and heat in our body, if we don't get the oxygen to where the blood is absorbing the nutrients, we are not going to be burning proper fuel. And your red blood cells want to carry as much oxygen as possible. So the place where they're absorbing most of the oxygen, in your lungs, if you're only breathing on the top part of your lungs, what about the 60% down below that's not getting filled, but blood's there waiting for it? What about all the nutrients in your gut around your small intestine that are trying to be absorbed into your red blood cells, and they're sitting there stagnant because your lungs are not pushing against your small intestine to move the blood supply and make your heart beat faster? I could prove this anytime. I could sit somebody down on a chair perfectly still and teach them in a minute to make their belly move and start breathing in their belly. And after a minute, a person with cold hands and feet will say, hey, my hands and feet feel warm. And if somebody else had a stethoscope and started listening to their heart, would say, wow, your heart's beating like you're running, but you're sitting still. Why? It's because as soon as you make the diaphragm work properly, the heart has to pump more blood. Your body knows that. And right away circulation occurs. Extremities start to warm up. Because you're moving, blood supply.
Amazing. I actually learned how to breathe properly the way you're describing it when I first started yoga. And just doing yoga in a dojo, they just said, really, when we were lying down, right? They said, don't raise your chest, breathe into your gut, breathe into your stomach, right? And that's how I learned it, and it totally it changed the way I exercise. And when you brought that up, I just corrected myself because I was hunched over, and I was just lifting my shoulders, and I realized I wasn't breathing, and I feel short of breath. The video might have picked up me yawning a bit because I'm lacking oxygen.
Even I'm sitting here, if I take a breath, this is going to move on me. It's just automatic.
You can't avoid it, yeah.
It's automatic, but I don't have to think about it anymore. It's just automatic. That's where I'm supposed to breathe.
That's amazing, because a lot of the time I find myself shifting to the upper breathing, and I have to consciously shift to lower because I know I feel better, and I have to take fewer breaths when I'm using my diaphragm to push down the organs there, breathing with my stomach rather than breathing with the chest, right? I take fewer breaths.
Well, this is the way you were born. And lots of times when I'm speaking public or whatever, I'll get somebody to come up and put their hands actually on my hip bones, and I'll take a breath and they can actually feel my bones move. And so I say, when you're breathing properly, you're moving your entire organ system right down. It's moving. That's the way you were born. And breathing. And you can look at any dog laying down, a cat, any animal. You never see anywhere else breathing and their chest moving. You see right between their legs, right into the lower flank. That's what's moving. Because they know that's where they're supposed to breathe. Every animal on earth, every bird, every creature breathes that way. Everything, even insects. It's human beings. We've been, our brains are being manipulated. And
it changes my mood too. I notice I can feel nervous and almost anxious.
Well, you cannot hold tension when you breathe here. You can't hold stress. You can't hold stress here.
Right, because you flex your stomach when you're stressed, right?
Right, you tighten up. But here, you have to relax. Because when you breathe here, it forces you to relax.
Unreal.
So you automatically de-stress your body.
Never made the connection before.
It just makes you relax. You have to relax to breathe here. Just naturally have to relax. So the body relaxes completely. You breathe here. Breathing here, you're always holding stress.
Great tip for people about to give a presentation, eh? I mean, just tell everybody, just
relax. Breathe in your diaphragm.
Yeah. So, Gary, did you ever, at any point, were you relying or using conventional medicine? Was there a turning point where you realized that conventional medicine, maybe, I don't want to be all-inclusive of all conventional medicine, but for the most part, was it ever effective in healing? Or did it just treat symptoms? Did you ever have experience where you...
I've never had any experience with conventional medicine has healed me. I've had experience where I've had damage to my hands, where doctors have sewed me up and stuff like that, and told me that they needed to operate to fix my nerves and everything else.
Did you ever cut tendon?
Oh yeah, I've cut tendon in this little finger. This hand here, which I show in my book, how I healed it just using gum from a spruce tree. I cut right through the bone in the tendon. And there's no scars, no stitches, no marks on my hand. It never changed color at all, ever. And there's pictures in my book to show that.
Yeah, I remember I saw a picture of your hand casted and...
Yeah, well, with bandages on it, but it wasn't casted. But anyway,
wow.
So that healed perfectly 100%.
Did you cut tendon at that point?
Oh yeah, it was cut right through.
Did they sew the tendon back together?
No.
What?
No, I just left it alone and it's healed back.
See that scar there? I fell on glass. I was probably around 10 years old, and it sliced right through the tendon. And so I remember the blood just spurting.
So she had a big Band-Aid on her knee. Mm-hmm. The day before, she fell in her driveway on the cement sidewalk and scraped off a patch of skin about that size. I mean, a huge patch. And when she was at my farm, she said her knee was hurting and everything that she'd scraped off. So I went over to a spruce tree at the farm and I picked off some gum. I gave her it on a piece of paper so it wouldn't stick all over to her hands, because I know how to pick it off so it doesn't get stuck to your hands so easily. Nice. And so I put it on a piece of paper for her and I said, okay, take your Band-Aid off and spread this over on your knee. And so she used up the gum, but she only spread about 3/4 of it. The other part she didn't put any on, and covered it up with the Band-Aid. And after a few minutes while I was working, fixing her car, she said, you know, my knee seems to feel better already. I said, well, don't worry, it's going to heal it up. So the following weekend, I was speaking at a venue in Hamilton, and she actually came out to see me, and she had no Band-Aid on, and she was telling everybody at the little setup where I was talking, look, the part that had the gum on is this complete skin now, and the other part, it's all scarred tissue. And so, wow, I've seen that kind of experience all the time. I've seen people up in Northern Ontario when I was a kid, a teenager, that had old accidents from farming damage, equipment, breaking a leg or damaging their ankles or hands, and whether it was my grandmother or some elder person, would run out into the forest and say, don't let that person go. And you'd keep them around till they came back, and they would just plaster this gum on, take a piece of cloth, cover it over, tie it off, and say, don't touch it till the gum falls off your skin on its own. Wow. And it's antifungal, antibacterial, anti-germicide. It's anti-everything except healing. And it heals. And it just heals. And, you know, it's one of the greatest things you can put in your mouth to chew to get rid of constipation, is any spruce tree gum. The only thing is it sticks to your teeth, and it will stay on your teeth till it wears off on its own, and it doesn't taste the greatest. So, you know, I show people a little trick. I say, take a tiny piece of bread, put a little gum in it, chew it up, and swallow it, and the bad stuff will want to eat the bread, and there's like a can of Raid inside the bad stuff. You know, because,
wow, yeah,
you know, it's like a little time bomb inside, and it'll just attack the bad bacteria, and it just cleans you out.
I guess the bread would go through your stomach primarily and get digested in the intestine.
Yeah,
where
it's
the bad bacteria would eat it.
Try to feed on the bread because it's a carb.
Right.
But inside the bread, you've chewed up with the spruce gum, which is antifungal, antibacterial, and it's going to attack the stuff that's want to eat the bread. And basically it's going to really kick a punch out of it. And so it's a simple little thing, but when I tell people to do this, something like this, I say don't do it every day. Because if you do this continuously every day, it will strip your intestinal tract pretty clean. And you don't want to do that. So, you know, if you did it, say, once a month, a small piece the size of your little finger, it's not going to harm you. It's just going to clean you up. So if you're constipated, not going to the bathroom, well, you do that once in a while, it's going to... You'll know you're going to the bathroom. Believe me, it'll clean you up.
It's amazing.
You know, when we were small, young kids, you know, old people would line us up and say they'd mix molasses and sulfur together, and the outhouse was never more than 50 feet away from your line of sight. The whole day you went to the bathroom. You had diarrhea for 10 hours. Oh, I'm telling you, it just cleaned you out. So when I was a kid growing up, old people did this. They had all these different remedies that they you know, gave you a little bit of something with a little bit of sugar mixed together, and it made you clean you up in the springtime. They cleaned your intestinal tract out. They washed you out.
Okay, this was done intentionally in the spring to clean you up.
To clean you out. Done intentionally to clean you up. Get rid of worms, parasites, bad bacteria out of your intestinal tract. All kinds of old people, they did this for themselves, and they did it for their children or family, friends, or whatever. There was always somebody who was doing that. And you didn't like the taste of what they were going to give you, and you knew you'd be stuck by the outhouse within 50 feet. You weren't going to the neighbors to visit because you couldn't walk that far. You had to run back to the outhouse. So, you know... because this was just cleaning you up inside, getting rid of all the toxins. So people knew this kind of stuff. Animals in nature do this. When they don't feel good, they eat something to make them go to the washroom, clean them up. right? They do it. They do it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we see dogs. Whenever my parents' dog is feeling sick, she won't touch her dog food, and she'll munch up grasses.
Yeah,
And,
cats do the same thing. Deer do the same thing. Every animal in nature does the same thing. Wolves, bears, everything. They eat something that clean them up. In the summertime, in August, bears will stop eating blueberries because chokecherries come up ripe. And now a chokecherry stone is high in cyanide. It's something I discuss in my book. There's 4 compounds in nature that all of nature eats. Cyanide, strychnine, malic acid, and tannic acid. All of nature eats this. They eat these compounds on an ongoing basis at different times of the year. And they eat them to keep their intestinal tract clean, to kill off the uncontrollable bad bacteria and bad parasites. And they kill them off by eating some of these fruits and vegetables and plants to kill them off. And so, to keep the balance back. And so, for example, black bears will just stop eating blueberries and they'll eat chokecherries. And chokecherries are bitter tasting. They dry out your mouth like crazy. The only part that's edible is the flesh. The bone is high in cyanide. And so, but chokecherries, the bears will eat literally pounds of them. And when chokecherries are in season, man, if you happen to be around where there's lots of chokecherries, you'll see piles of droppings from the bears full of these white bones because they eat the whole thing whole, and that just cleans them up. Because, in the springtime they're eating, they kill a moose or they kill some animals and they bury it, and they eat the fermented meat full of maggots, and they eat rotten fish, and they eat garbage they eat a lot of garbage and clean up the environment. That's their job. Bears are the pig of North America. Pigs come from Europe and Middle East. Bears are the pigs of North America. That's what they are. They're the garbage cleaners. They clean up all the garbage. That's what their job is in the environment. That's why we shouldn't eat them.
Okay, yeah, so I was going to say, because some people eat bear.
Right, yeah, well, I won't do that.
Okay.
I never did, never will.
Okay.
And so they clean up the garbage. And so that's their job. But they know how to keep themselves clean too, so that they don't die. So they eat certain things to clean up their intestinal tract, so that they will go into hibernation and live all winter and come out in the springtime like brand new and do their job. So, but we don't listen to them. We don't, So, for example, I take chokecherries and I pick them and I make chokecherries in water and honey, and I boil even with the stones inside. And in the wintertime, I take out a jar and I eat some of that, maybe once a week. Or, maybe once a month, or whenever I feel like. If I feel I'm a little sluggish because my intestinal tract is maybe eating too much of the good stuff I like to eat and it needs to be a little cleaned up, I eat some of those things. So I'm always cleaning up my body internally the way I've watched nature do it. Right? I keep track of that. All the time.
Amazing, yeah.
I'm going to be 58 tomorrow, like I mentioned earlier. Like, look, my skin.
Yeah.
I know. People make comments. What do you do? And I say, I eat my skin. Look at me kind of strange. I say, I eat good fats. I eat what makes my skin.
Skin is, phospholipid bilayer.
Right, it is. And I also make sure I keep my gut lining clean now by keeping the balance, by eating right combinations of foods.
And so if that method of cleansing or detoxing your bowels or digestive system is optimal, then I guess you're not going to show much signs of detoxing through your skin. Like you won't see acne, or because everyone knows one way to detox is to sweat, right?
Right. Well, at the same token, what people don't realize, the largest detoxification organ is our skin. It's the largest organ on our body, in our body, is our skin. It's an organ. The second largest is our liver. The primary function of our liver is to detoxify our body by cleaning our blood. So people don't eat to keep their liver healthy. I've known for years, because I wear glasses, my eyesight is weak. I eat to protect my liver because my liver and my eyes are connected. That's in Chinese medicine, that's in Ayurvedic medicine, that's in native culture. We know it's Russian folk medicine. We all know that eyes and liver are connected. All 4 continents, what I've talked about, have always promoted eating healthy to keep your liver healthy. That's why the Bible talks in the Old Testament that we are tied to the herbs of the field. It says when you eat your bread, eat it with bitter herbs. You look at society today, it doesn't matter where you go, people are eating bread with sugar. Donut shops, cakes, jams, everything's eaten with bread and sweet. You're promoting yeast growth because bread is cooked with yeast. So yeast feed off sugar. So you're promoting them to overgrow in your body. But if you ate your bread with bitter herbs, you would stimulate stomach acid because bread and meat are both things that are very hard to digest. And something that always struck my mind, people say, well, you shouldn't eat carbs with protein. You go back to the Old Testament, Abraham entertained angels. He went out into the field and he slaughtered a small young calf, and he was cooking the roast in the fire heath, and his wife was making fine meal to make bread. And they fed the angels meat, bread, and fresh milk.
I remember reading that, and after hearing what you said,
so I'm thinking in my mind, wait a minute, it was good enough for angels to eat, and obviously Abraham ate with them.
Right.
And he was instructed by the angels to ferment the milk. He would have a long life. His life is recorded at 177 years of age. He also got married twice and had children with the second wife. She was only 38. Wow. And he was well over 100 and 20.
Yep.
So this kind of stuff is in my mind, thinking, what happened? He put those combinations together. He was eating that food. He was healthy. He was a cattle farmer. He had so many cows that him and his brother had to separate, one go east and one go west, because their herders were fighting who could get some grass. So, people don't look at history. They don't look at information. People say, oh, the Bible's a religious book. No, it's some people making money off of the information. It's got nothing to do with what's written down. It's got to do with what people are using it for. But they're not telling you what's in the book. They're just using the book to make profit from it. Saying, give me your money, have faith, I'll see you in heaven. Stop telling lies. Read what's in there. It doesn't say that. It says totally different. But people don't read everything. They don't sit down and examine truth. Whether it's in the environment, whether it's in a book, whether it's on the computer, they don't prove all things. They let somebody else say, oh yeah, this is the gospel, this is perfect, this is the way it is. But did you prove it? Did you actually go and look? There's a big difference. Right? That's why I'm not a millionaire in any shape, way, or form, is because I spent most of my life proving things. Figuring out, yeah, does this work or not? And I've been the guinea pig. I'm the evidence.
So there's a certain reward, though, you do get, right? I mean, by being amazingly healthy and by being absolute confident in your own experimentation and proving things, right? I mean, that's an amazing reward. If you were somehow to be able to pay for that, it wouldn't be the same than if you were to work to the same conclusion.
There's no amount of money anywhere on the earth that could buy your health.
Right.
I sat in hospitals with multi-millionaires who would have traded everything for their health back. Trade everything. And the medical system failed them, and their money did too. Because they didn't have enough money to buy their health back. So, I would rather be comfortable to the poor side and live forever than to be rich. I used to want to be rich. Now I'm actually thinking, hey, I'm okay. I'm rich in other ways.
No argument with that. Absolutely. Agree 100%. I mean, you talked about healing, just giving your body the nutrition to heal itself, and that all the healing mechanisms are there. And before we put on the cameras, we talked a little bit about vitamin B17, and it's, the fact that it has like a cyanide in it that, according...
Well, Laetrile is cyanide. It's B17. But, you don't have to buy apricot kernels imported from another country. I mean, cherry pits, plum pits, peach pits, all have cyanide in
Apple seeds have cyanide, right?
Yes, apple seeds too. So, if it's naturally grown, you got a fruit tree in your backyard, you can break open the shells. I mean, I have a jar over here, probably has 500 stones from my own backyard. Whenever I need some, I can just crack them open and I eat them. So, and they'll keep, wow, you could keep that for 20 years and it won't spoil.
Amazing.
And if I decide I want to take one of those shells and put them in the ground, it's going to grow me a tree. So whenever I need it, crack it open, eat it. If I want to grow it, get a little crack in it, make a little break in it, throw it in my freezer, let it stay there for a couple of days, freeze solid, because that's what it does in the earth.
Right, during the winter.
Yeah, and then take it back out. It takes 2 years for the shell to open.
Oh, wow.
So put it in your freezer, freeze it solid, crack it open, throw it in the ground, and you speed up the process.
It tricks the sprouting process, I guess?
No, because you cracked it open now, the water is going to get into it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
Right, because it starts to grow inside and spread, and then it takes a couple of years of freezing and contraction for the shell to open up, and then the seed will start to grow. And so that's why not every one of them will grow, because some of them will just stay, they didn't freeze properly to break open. So
it's the contraction, the expansion that eventually opens it.
Right. So if you put it in your freezer and you freeze it, you crack it and freeze it, now the cycle, you made the cycle. It's broken.
Yeah.
It froze. You put it in the ground. It's going to defrost in the ground, and it's going to open up and start to grow.
It's just a little, I guess, homage to your Free Living 101 DVDs, which I have, where you talk about taking decorative, like Indian corn, as it's called, and it's like, so I was in Loblaws around like Thanksgiving, I guess. I was near my parents, and I'm like, I need this. I gotta try this. So I bought it in the fall, and I'm hoping to sprout.
Yeah, but you also got to be careful. Some of the decorative corn you find in stores is, so it could be genetically altered or not grown 100%.
This stuff's like blue and red. It's small.
But I know. But sometimes you can still get corn like that looks nice and everything else. But it's big companies that are growing it to sell to the stores.
That's a good point. Yeah, like where would they source that?
Right. So they've collected the seed, and sometimes it's genetically modified or altered as well. Where you see, I got my actual seed from a door wreath.
Yeah.
At a yard sale, and so. That's a little bit different.
You knew that was probably homemade, or at least it was old.
Well, I asked a lady, and she told me it was like, or it was her grandmother that had it.
Nice. So kind of before GMO kind of hit the market wide, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't even care about the GMO, because that thing was already maybe 50, 60 years old when her grandmother made it. So,
oh, wow.
It's really old corn seed.
And
I know the way it grows. I've grown that seed over and over again, and I see the way the corn looks. It's a slender cob, really long. When they grow good, the corns of cob will be about 18 inches long.
Wow.
And even when you pick it fully ripe, the end will still keep growing sometimes. It'll be green, and if you would have left it, it would grow longer and longer.
Amazing.
It doesn't look like the corn that you see in the stores. It's not even, because that's... They selectively take seed out, and they modify the seed and genealogy and everything else to get a particular type of corn. More higher in fructose, and more higher in corn syrup, and more cornstarch, because they want those products, because the genetically altered corn, they don't make very much money selling the corn in the store. Where they make the money is from selling all the products they're using in industry. right?
Mhm.
That's what they're using most of the corn for.
Yeah, totally. Like
Right.
I just recently learned maltodextrin is a corn byproduct,
Right.
and that you see that everywhere, like from potato chips to
Right. So all of
yeah.
these byproducts that they're taking from a plant, they're making isolated compounds. And nothing in nature when you eat it is an isolated compound.
No, it's all it's just yeah.
There's always a trifactor. There'll be one main ingredient and two subs, and then there'll be a bunch of trace stuff. But there's always a trifactor.
Cool.
So you never went to the store and bought H1O,
No.
right? Because that wouldn't exist as water, right? It would be something else. So you buy H2O, which is water, right? It's three molecules.
Yeah.
If you look at the atomic structure, it's a neutron, a proton, and an electron makes the atomic structure. You have three parts. You look at every seed has the center part, the middle part, and the shell. Every fruit has a seed pocket, the flesh, and the skin. You have three parts. You were a baby.